All right, welcome to the new JFK Show number 138. Tonight we're going to do Badgeman. We've got Dr. Jim Fetzer, Larry Rivera, and Don Fox. So we do have a full crew on deck tonight. I was going through some boxes and I came across this piece of paper, had a few coffee stains on it, and I realized that Richard Hook had given this to me at the Santa Barbara conference that Jim Fetzer held on the 50th anniversary. That Larry Rivera was actually one of the speakers. That's when I met him there. So anyway, there's the main thesis here is that there's 12 points of the Moorman photograph being that Badgeman being real, and of course we discovered Badgeman through the Mary Moorman photograph. So we're going to go ahead and start with the very first photograph. And
see down at the bottom, Jack White realized that there was a point in the photograph that had to be on the line of sight from the camera when Mary took the photograph. This was all related to whether Mary was in the street or on the grass. And that you can find here, see at the bottom right there, there's this intersection of the windows with the top of this little pergola where Zapruder was standing that creates a line of sight on which the camera had to be situated. So David Manting and I went down to Dealey Plaza. We had a theodolite, we had a meter stick and all that to line it up in accordance with Jack's line of sight. And what we discovered was that in fact Mary had been in the street precisely as she and Jean Hill, who was with her, had always maintained, where for those who are new to the case, Mary had a Polaroid camera. She would take photographs and hand them to Jean, who'd coat them with a preservative and then put them in her pocket. After the assassination, they were approached by agents who had them under surveillance, took the photographs from her, took Jean in particular to a distant building and interrogated her. It was all very shocking. It was Jean who, by the way, gave the name Grassy Knoll to this area we're looking at in the photographs. Larry, to add what you'd like to add here.
Yeah, the person who took Moorman's pictures was Jim Underwood, who some people have done research on, and it wasn't really, could have been that he wasn't really who he was. But I think Don had some points to make that he'd made earlier. If you wanted to make them again, and I'll just join in.
Sure. Okay. Yeah, the Moorman photo is one of the most famous images from the assassination, and it really hit the mainstream consciousness, I think, of the research community with the men who killed Kennedy back in '88, and with Jack White and our guy Gary Mack doing a lot of work on that. And in a later episode of The Men Who Killed Kennedy, Tom Wilson took this photo and he ran it through some processing where he used to he was like a quality control guy for steel manufacturing, and he would have, this is back in the the early 90s, and it was 256 color, the grayscale basically. But from that he was able to rebuild a mold of Kennedy's head wound from this picture. He built a three-dimensional model of the head, and you can see the two bullet fragments. And he was able, with the Moorman photo, he laid out all the measurements into a computer, and he determined that the angle of the bullet shot was coming up into Kennedy's temple.
That's right.
Okay, Larry, you were saying that this. I was under the impression that this was one of the photographs that got out and was in the newspapers before there was any altering going on. But you're saying that's not the case.
No. I'll tell you what Roy told me. But go ahead, Don. Finish your thought.
So yeah, just to wrap it up. So Tom Wilson was able to rebuild, whether it was whether the photo was altered or not, he was able to rebuild a model of the head wound, and he also confirmed the presence of Badgeman in the photo.
Yeah, just for general orientation, Badgeman is almost directly up in the center behind the wall here. We'll focus in on that area, which of course in this image is obscure. But you know, there are two issues here about Tom Wilson's reconstruction. John Costello, who has a PhD in electromagnetism, and I discussed this extensively, and we couldn't figure out what would enable him to take this two-dimensional photograph and turn it into a three-dimensional study. And I found his work fascinating, but we could never figure out how it was done, number one.
Nobody else could reproduce it either.
Number two, David Manick and I went to the ground level sewer opening. David climbed into the sewer while I was there. The angle was wrong. The shot that we're talking about here appears to have been fired from the intersection of the triple underpass and the picket fence, an above ground sewer opening there, where with a little bit of camouflage, it's a perfect location. And if you look at, this is the third point then, if you look at the photograph, look at Jack's right shoulder. There's a chunk there that seems to be either his skull, his hair, whatever, on his shoulder. Number four, and Larry, you may be able to address this. Since this is supposed to have been taken a fraction of a second after the bullet that hit in the vicinity of the right temple and blew out the back of his head, the wound that Tom somehow may have reconstructed, it seems to me, we know Bobby Hargis was just, hit with debris so hard that it made him think initially he himself had been shot. And therefore I ask, shouldn't we be seeing that debris in this photograph?
Okay, just a couple of other points. Okay, what Tom Wilson did was the way he was able to, and not that I'm an expert on, photographic, photography or, analysis or anything, but as I understand it, what he was talking about was he could take the picture of the tree there and then the tree shadow, and then from that he was able to, kind of like what Larry does with Blender now, turn that into a 3D operation. With that, I mean, again, all of that is beyond my skill of, I can't.
And it will be done. That was like, a very early precursor.
Come forward, Larry. Come forward, closer. Yeah.
A very early precursor of what we can do now with Blender. We'll be able to reproduce exactly the head and everything, and the wound and the angle of Badgeman, the distance. We'll be able to do everything and prove that Badgeman was there. That's in the near future.
Go to the next one, and you'll see where there's the image of a fingerprint. It's not too bad in this particular copy, which appears to have been deliberately imposed on this Polaroid photograph to obfuscate. What's always been puzzling to me, if they were going to deliberately obfuscate features of the photograph, why the escort officers? That I don't get. Larry.
Oh, well, Beverly Brunson said that they were in the field of view, the line of sight of the sniper, okay, from the Dow Techs, and I'm sorry, from the 6th floor of the school book depository. If you plot that line from there and due to the downslope of Elm Street, then you would have to necessarily have to take out the motorcycle copy, because people would have inferred that the line of sight just didn't add up. So
what you're saying, Larry, is if the gunman had actually been in the 6th floor sniper's nair, we know for a fact he wasn't there. But if he had been, then the presence of the motorcycle escort officers, like the great oak tree, would have obfuscated the shot. So
exactly.
This would have been disproof of the official account of the assassination.
Absolutely. Now, we did discuss, some of the alterations, because you can't see them here, but in the previous slide where Bill Newman is missing his entire shoulder, they're on the right. And I've done a lot of studies on the motorcycle cop that looks like he's elevated there on the right, which it should have been Jackson. It wasn't Shaney. I've done overlays on that, and it's not Shaney at all. That's pretty conclusive. But the position of that motorcycle cop and the features and the chin strap of the helmet, that in particular, that feature in particular, is completely different if you compare with the chin strap in all the other images of Shaney or any of the other motorcycle cops he escort. That chin strap was a lot wider, and what you see here, very thin, which probably doesn't even pass as a chin strap. And I found that very interesting for those who think that the Moorman photograph has not been altered.
Well, okay, and one other point that I'd like to make is that my theory has always been that one of the main reasons why the Zapruder film was altered was to obfuscate where the limo was when the fatal headshot occurred.
Right.
And my theory is that, and from what I've heard from some of the witnesses, is that the limo was almost to the steps where you can see those people on the steps there watching the motorcade. Yeah. That it was almost to the steps when the fatal headshot occurred. And that would be right next to that storm sewer.
Yeah, that's him in Hudson.
Don, I'm telling you, we got down in the storm sewer. David and I agreed the angle was wrong. Now, I don't know what more to tell you. I mean, we can work it out with mathematical precision. I expect with Larry's blender that we'll be able to reconstruct all of this better. But David also believes that it was further toward the steps, which raises questions about the entire scenario here. I mean, what shot then would he be responding to, you know?
Well,
if Tom Wilson has got a reconstruction of the back of the head wound, then it has to be the shot that David, you, and I, and others all believe actually took place further down the street. So how do we reconcile that?
And which is entirely visible in frame 343. I mean, in shocking detail with that work that we did last year that you also presented last November at the JFK conference, Jim. Zapruder frame 343 is just unbelievable. You can see the size of the blowout in the back of the head. It's just unmistakable because Jackie's white glove serves as a background for that the definition of the magnitude of that wound.
That's right. Taken from the opposite. So we need to do something to get the interplay between the Zapruder, even though it's altered, and the Moorman to see if we can figure it out by some sort of method of successive approximation.
We have to reverse engineer altered evidence to come up with an answer. So
that's right. That's exactly right, Don.
It's a best effort. You know, some of this may never get settled, 100%, but we have to take our best shot at it.
Right, absolutely. And the coherence of the totality of the evidence is our guide as to whether we've got the pieces of the puzzle put together right. Now, before Gary goes to the next slide, almost directly in the middle, just above the concrete structure, it turns out that Jack White and Gary Mack were able to discern two figures, one of whom is known as Badgeman, the other is got a helmet on and seems to have been assisting him. And they actually did a colorized version to bring out what was going on there, what they had discerned, which, Gary, now you can go to the next slide. Yeah, see, we need more in between this, unfortunately. I don't know. What other slides have you got, Gary? You got another one? No.
Well, the Moorman photograph supposedly occurred between 3:15 and 3:16, and that also altered where they were in the street, actually. There's the Badgeman photograph in the best color that we have. Point number 2 is that the photograph was verified by MIT in 1982 to unquestionably be in the men firing a rifle. Point number 3, which we will get to, is JFK researcher, photo op technician Jack White confirmed the 3 figures and a muzzle flash. So that's later on in the presentation with the Army hat guy, Arnold, as well.
Arnold, yep.
We're on point number 2 right now.
Well, I just don't think anyone can understand where this photograph in color came from if they don't see the intervening closing into the issue.
All right, so this is where the Moorman photograph was supposedly taken at this instant between this one, and this is around the time that the Moorman photograph is supposed to be.
Mind you, just looking at this, look at Jack's head, and you see that bright thing on the side of the head.
Yeah.
They seem to have moved that from the back of the head to the side and then blacked out the back of the head where it actually had originated.
Yeah, we don't see any of that in the Moorman photo.
Well, it's taken from the other side, of course.
Right.
Well, yeah, but still, look at all that material there. You'd see something like that if it was at the same time. So it must have been.
Yeah.
If this is legit, it must be a split second after the Moorman photo was taken.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's supposed to be at that moment. And then this is her, and we've got Beverly Oliver over here, and but then once again, this is altered as well. They're supposed to be standing in the street, as Jim's been talking about.
Yeah, and one thing I want to make is, our guy Robert Groden is out there every year, and he always puts an X out in the middle of the street where the Zapruder film, you can ring Zapruder, Gary, Zapruder, ring the bell.
Ding-a-ling-a-ling, I don't have it with me. I'll find it.
Okay.
Play some chords.
Where Zapruder said that the fatal headshot occurred, Groden puts that X way too far up the street.
I agree.
And I think that's intentional. I think he's trying to obfuscate where the actual fatal headshot took place.
You don't mean to suggest that's his role in JFK research, do you?
Well, I think that's part of it.
Well, we asked Beverly Oliver personally. She told us it was much further down the street. We have actual original footage of her telling us that. So there you go.
That's right. That's right.
So on to point number 2, the photograph was confirmed by MIT in 1982 that it was a man firing a rifle.
You'd think that might have made the front pages of the New York Times.
No.
Not a chance.
Not a chance. Yeah, fake news. New York.
Ding-a-ling-a-ling.
Yeah, owned by the Sulzberger family. Yes.
Mm-hmm. And so this seems to be a Kodak 3-piece, but you can totally see the Dallas Police Department thing.
Now, there was a lot of speculation as to actually who that man was firing the rifle there. Who actually was?
Yeah, we're going to get to that a little bit later on there. All right. So on to point number 3, that JFK researcher photo op technician Jack White confirmed the 3 figures and a muzzle flash. So there's a picture of our man right there, and yeah, working the slides in definitely the old school manner, but he was on it big time. So didn't you work with Jack White quite a bit, Dr. Fetzer?
Yes. Jack was with us in Dealey Plaza when we were testing his hypothesis about the line of sight and confirming that thereby that Mary had to have been in the street, which of course, as I may have already observed, she and Jean always insisted had been the case.
Mm-hmm. There you go. Anything about Jack White, Don or Larry?
Before I started working with Jim Fetzer, I watched a lot of Jack. I was a big fan of Jack White on The Men Who Killed Kennedy, and then later on I started watching a lot of YouTube stuff that he had done.
Yeah, the great Zapruder film Hoax. I've watched it 100 times, I think.
Yeah.
And Fake, the Framing of Lee Oswald, I've really watched that a bunch of times. I actually go to sleep watching that sometimes at night. So, all right. So now we were just talking about him. Tom Wilson confirmed in 1988 the existence of Badgeman through computer programs. All right. So there's our guy right there. And Don was talking about him earlier. So,
yeah, the late great Tom Wilson, who is sadly no longer with us to discuss any of this stuff or explain how he did what he did. He was like the only guy on the planet that really knew how to use this equipment in the way he did. So, or the only one that would talk about it publicly, anyhow.
Well, that was the dinosaur era, man. Because,
yeah, it was.
Yeah, that was late 80s, early 90s.
Yeah, it says he was a U.S. Steel engineer, confirmed in 1988 the existence of Badgeman, and his assistant with his computer programs based on PhotoNet.
He called it was photonics, is what he.
Photonics, okay. Yep. used in the Jet Propulsion Laboratories at NASA Space Center in his book, A Deeper, Darker Truth by John T. Phillips. So he was trying hard with the Larry Rivera techniques back then, but like you said, it was in the Stone Age.
I mean, yeah, could you imagine what Tom Wilson would do with Blender?
Yeah, no doubt about it. All right, so now, next, Gordon Arnold's account confirms that he was the Army man holding the camera on leave. Just having completed basic training, Arnold heard and felt 2 shots go over his shoulder, and in his film, confiscated by 2 cops, one holding a rifle. Immediately after, before the shooting, Arnold was asked to leave the area by the railroad overpass. So that was in another one in The Men Who Killed Kennedy too.
Yep. I mean, really, you can't. I mean, there's people that have, you know, there's obviously critics of The Men Who Killed Kennedy, but you know, I think it's held up very well over time. You know, Nigel Turner did an excellent job. You know, he didn't get it 100% right, but you know, who does? He did some great work, massive contribution.
Oh,
I agree. I think for its time, it was absolutely stunning work.
Yeah, there's no question about that.
Yeah. So you can see him in that right there with his Army hat on.
Well, he was actually on the steps.
No, he was in front of the fence.
Yeah.
He was in between. I just wanted to say a couple of things on this Gordon Arnold. If you watch The Rich Man's Trick, that 3-hour video that's on YouTube.
Yeah, we debunked some of that though in one of our shows.
Oh, okay. Well, no, I'm just mentioning it. I'm just mentioning that he proposes that Gordon Arnold is a false flag witness. Okay, so you know, I'm just mentioning that.
Well, if that's true, I mean, if you watch The Men Who Killed Kennedy, and you see those close, you know, the reconstruction of that Moorman photo, and you look at that guy that's in that picture, and then you look at Gordon Arnold, man, it's pretty darn close.
Yeah, and another thing on go ahead, Jim.
I was just going to add, when he's shown the photograph reconstructed,
oh, he had
his emotional reaction is very powerful and authentic, saying that if he had known he was in that proximity to the assassin, one of the shooters, he doesn't think he would have ever said a word about it. That it's clear he was traumatized by discovering his proximity to the Badgeman.
And he's got a witness, Congressman Yarborough, who said that he saw him dive in reaction to a report.
Yeah, that's what you're talking about. Yeah, this is
Ralph Yarborough in the same The Men Who Killed Kennedy mentions that he saw somebody dive in reaction to a report in the way that you are trained to.
Right, and that was what Gordon Arnold described what he did, that he hit the deck.
Yeah. And I just wanted to interject real quick. The only thing that I loved The Men Who Killed Kennedy, the only thing that I did not agree, that I thought was a little far-fetched, was that Corsican mafia angle, you know.
Well, yeah. Now, do I think that Lucien Sarti was Badgeman? No.
Right.
But was okay, you know, as I was doing research, as I was doing research into Perm Index, you know, that it and what Piper talked about is the Montreal, the JFK Montreal connection is, you know, the French connection. It's really it's the Jewish connection.
Okay.
So there's some links there now. Yeah, what we saw in The Men Who Killed Kennedy, you know, I think we've got some newer, more updated info than that.
So this is the one you're talking about right here. This is when he became emotional and began to, you know, right there. So
yeah, that's right, Gary.
So what about the Railroad Man? Have y'all done any work on him?
Do you mean Hard Hat Man?
Yeah, Hard Hat.
Yeah, apparently a railroad worker. I don't know if anybody's. I haven't heard any theories of who he was.
He would have been a spotter.
Jim,
he was a spotter, yeah, but who it was in reality was it?
Oh, of course, everybody was dressed for the occasion.
Jim Mars and I both believe, by the way, that Badgeman was Roscoe White.
Yeah, I think that I tend to agree with you guys on that one. I think it was a Dallas police officer.
All right, Roscoe White said it was him firing a rifle, 2 shots in his journal recovered by his son. In the journal, hey, in the journal, White also confessed to killing 28 witnesses of the assassination. So that's pretty powerful there. So this is the press conference with his son bringing out this information.
But unfortunately, he made the blunder of giving the diary of his father. And how many adult men do you know who keep diaries and aren't working for the CIA to the FBI? And of course, it disappeared. I mean, this was legally admissible evidence.
Yeah, I mean, boy, giving it to the wrong people. Oh my goodness, he blew it. So right here, this is actually going to back a little bit to our other show. This is Roscoe White. Anyway, we got this picture here as far as the backyard photographs. So what do you think, Larry?
I want to say that when you put Roscoe's head on that body, it's a perfect fit for the body type, you know, that Roscoe had. You know, it's just unbelievable. The fellow that did this, you know, I really got to take my hat off, you know.
He was actually more athletic in his build than Lee Oswald.
Exactly. And he fit, you know, the neck, especially the neck, you know.
Yeah, he was. Yep. And now we should get a photo of him wearing a Dallas police uniform, because that's
well, we do have it, but it doesn't look like him at all. I already tried that.
Yeah, I wanted to talk about the Comedy Mag that Don was talking about, where you make sure you have a few communist newspapers in your photo. But Jack White actually, over studying this photograph for as long as he did, overlooked the fact that the magazine was 11.5 inches, I believe, or something like that, and was able to use it. He was just astonished that he never thought of it himself, because someone else gave him the idea, and come to find out, Lee wasn't the right height in there.
You don't mean Lee wasn't the right height. You mean the man who was standing in for Lee was too short.
That's what I meant.
Or alternatively, they introduced the newspapers too large, so that when you laid them off as a ruler, it reduced the height of the man in the image. It looks to me like Roscoe was pretty much the same height as Lee, in fact, but the way they did the photo, if you use the newspapers as the ruler, it makes him about 5'6", when Lee was 5'9" or 10.
Mm-hmm. I see. So we were talking about this last week, the famous bump on, I think Jack White's got it. I mean, there it is right there. The body fits, the bump on the elbow, and you're saying that y'all believe that this man is Badgeman as well.
Yeah, the bump on the wrist, yeah.
Yeah, it was from a fracture or something, right?
Yeah, broken hand probably.
Broken hand.
All right, so point number 7, Gene Hill saw a muzzle flash and a puff of smoke. So let's see. From the grassy knoll behind the picket fence in the Badgeman position, firing a rifle. And there she is, pointing right there to it. So
love that, Gene.
Yeah, this is one of the few witnesses that really never changed their story whatsoever.
Right, she was a tough lady.
Yeah,
she was threatened enough times.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I read her book, the Last Descending Witness, I believe it was.
Yeah.
That was a good reason. I mean, she went through torture, and then finally, in the end, she was personal friends with Kevin Costner and Hollywood stars, so it maybe redeemed her. So there is a altered photograph, right, Larry?
Jim knows more about me about this one.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, I mean, they weren't on the grass when this was going on; they were in the street.
And they were certainly looking at the president.
No, and the shoes. Don't forget the shoes. They were wearing black shoes.
That's right. I know. Yeah. Gene stepped into the street and called out, "Hey, Mr. President, look this way. We want to take your picture." And Mary snapped it right about that point, and also, of course, was in the street when she took the picture.
So that's where you can tell that the Zapruder film, the background was not timed with the limo. You know, that was.
Yeah.
Look at all the effort they put to fake us out about all of this. Look how long it's taken us to sort it out.
Yeah. And not only that, you're going to miss your chance to look at the president. She's looking behind the limousine. Just makes no sense whatsoever.
Right.
Yeah.
See, they were on the grass earlier. So you took footage where they were on the grass earlier, and then you move it over using optical printing.
And here's the two ladies that just happen to be Well, their life changed forever. Life wasn't kind to them.
It's Gene on the left and Mary on the right.
Yeah.
Mary looks pretty distraught, actually.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, nobody who was alive that day is like that's one thing Weisberg said was no one who was alive then is recovered from it.
Right.
Well, they were taken to the third floor of the county records building to this office that overlooked the plaza, and Jean talks about this where she says, they had the best view of the assassination up there, right.
And they asked her how many shots she heard, and she started talking about the wrong number. And they told her, no, it was impossible. There were only 3 shots.
He said 4 to 6. He said, no, you heard 3. No, 4 to 6.
We're only willing to say
3. How in the age could we know what Mary Moorman had heard or Gene Hill had heard? How
that was one of the
else know?
That was one of the best scenes in the movie JFK.
Yeah.
And they also took some of her pictures.
3 shots. That's all we're willing to say. Yeah, well, what about the men on the, behind the picket fence? Hey, we will take care of that,
We will take care of that, right.
Yeah.
We'll shut up any witness who talks about it.
Yeah. And if you watch the movie real close, you can see the real Gene Hill in the background as a secretary. Oliver Stone like to
Just like
do
they
that.
put Jim Garrison in as Earl Warren.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Jim Garrison.
And here, Garrison is this towering figure, and they replace him with this little Kevin Costner guy.
Yeah.
He was a pipsqueak compared to Jim Garrison.
Yeah, 6'6".
No doubt about it. All right. Good old Lee. All right. Railroad switch operator Lee Bowers, stationed in the tower, told his friend Walter Rachel he witnessed 2 men pull up in a car by Badgeman's position, get out and both shoot at the president. Bowers saw a flash, smoke, and said both men fired. Because of his assassination knowledge, Lee Bowers was terrorized for years. He had a finger chopped off and was run off the road into a cement embankment and killed. So there's not many pictures of him. It wouldn't be from Mark Lane. We wouldn't have anything.
Yeah, this is Lee Bowers, yes.
Mm-hmm.
How do you get a finger chopped off, Gary?
Man, that's telling you better keep quiet. That's how. And we mean it.
I also saw the Knoll Rider.
Right,
Yeah.
that's right.
Absolutely, and that's the tower that he was hanging from. I mean, way up. I mean, what better view from what happened behind the fence than Lee Bowers? He was just too close.
Lee was one of the most important witnesses. That's why they took him out. I mean, he saw all kinds of goings on behind that picket fence. Cars coming and going, and the muzzle flash. And that's another great scene in the movie JFK where Costner's reading Bowers' testimony to the Warren Commission. He's laying awake at night, like 2 a.m, and Bowers is talking about all this activity behind the picket fence. And he says, I'm unable to explain, a flash or something going on that led me to believe there was some commotion behind the picket fence.
Commotion behind the fence. There was something here I can't really describe exactly. Yeah.
That's exactly the way he describes it in his Warren Commission testimony.
Yeah, that's kind of, yeah. And Costner reads that and he's like, then he turns around to Sissy Spacek and she's like, what's the matter? And he's like, God damn it, Liz, I've been sleeping for 3 years.
Yeah. Boy, well, I know Liz personally, and she did suffer like that, and she wanted him to just leave it alone for her marriage's sake. But
that was a great line by Sissy Spacek. You and your government. That line's always stuck.
She didn't even believe him. She thought, just
no.
Ray Shaw's a homosexual, and it was really something. All right, so this is pretty much what Lee Bowers saw from the tower that day. You can see the fence in the front. It's not the best picture, but pretty easy to see that he's at the vantage point for sure.
Yeah, what did Lee? He died in a 1-car crash out on a dirt road
with a weird expression on his face.
Yeah, that's something else. All right, here we go. The Stemmers Freeway sign was removed because bullets that impacted the sign were in direct line a badgeman, and the president. So there's a Stemmons Freeway sign. Well, actually, it's further down, isn't it? Or is that the one?
Yeah,
That's it. That's it. Okay. And
Look how far back the escort officers are. They're not doing any protection for the president.
they got their legs crossed.
For the Queen Mary, but not for JFK.
Yeah.
You know, those Secret Service agents need protection.
Yeah. And there's a lot of stuff about to happen at this moment. They're going to cut out of the film.
That's Willis number 5, by the way.
Mm-hmm. So here's another sign. It's a little further down. So I don't know of any significance of that. So, all right. Okay, point number 10. Okay, in 1977, the HSCA concluded by acoustic evidence of a shooter in the Badgeman location. And
Yeah, but that was just another lone nut.
yeah,
That's right. By sheerest coincidence, taking the same time and place to shoot at the JFK. Totally unrelated to anyone else in the plaza.
Yeah, 2 lone nuts. I mean, who'd have thunk it? Yeah.
yeah. Guess where I got the screenshot off the History Channel. How about that? So, all right, on to number 11, our Roscoe White. So I guess we said all we can say about him. All right, in the last
Roscoe was certainly one of the most important people to look at in this whole mess.
Yeah, there's no doubt about it. Roscoe is probably one of the under-researched guys in the whole thing.
Well, yeah, as far as at the mechanic level, Roscoe White is definitely a guy to look at.
Mm-hmm. No question about it. All right, and all right, so last point, James Fowler's lying when stating that there was no one else behind the picket fence. So what do y'all think about James Fowles? I don't think we've ever discussed him very much.
Well, yeah, as much as it pains me to say it, I think Jim DiEugenio gets that right. I think he's right about James Files. That I don't think Files had anything to do with the assassination. Because DiEugenio was talking.
I'm not even going to waste my time talking about that guy. You know,
Files.
When Confessions of an Assassination first came out, a TV station in Duluth wanted me to come and comment about it, and I watched the film twice and concluded that while he knew a great deal about the assassination, I gave him like an 80% truth frequency, so about 80% of what he said about the assassination was correct, but that he was disqualified, number one, because he didn't mention the limo stop, which set up his shot. No one who had actually taken the shot could have not mentioned the limo stop. Number two, that the idea that Chucky Nicoletti had invited him to be a participant in the assassination of the President of the United States the morning of the event.
Yep, that's the point I was going to make.
Completely absurd.
Yep.
But the weapon he claimed to have used, this Remington Fireball, which is a high-velocity handgun with a shoulder attachment, looked to me very interesting as a weapon. So I thought the weapon he talked about was much more interesting than Files, although there are those, including our friend in Europe, who has gone bananas over Files, you know. JFK murder, it's all Wim Dankbar.
Yeah,
that James Files is a cat's meow here and tells us everything we need to know about the assassination. That, to me, falls into the category of, what's a technical term for it? Bullshit.
Yeah, I think that's about it. Yeah.
Come to find out, we have a new historical landmark. It's called the Ruth Payne household. So we've got a little 5-minute video, and then we've got another one by George de Mohrenschildt, and then we'll be out.
The first van loads of visitors
This is amazing.
are getting their look inside a small South Irving home that earned a place in history.
It was certainly, the world came to our door.
The story is long, but the simple version goes like this. Go back 50 years. Ruth Payne lived here and invited a friend to stay over. That friend was married to Lee Harvey Oswald. Oswald was living here when, according to investigators, he killed President John F. Kennedy.
The story we're trying to tell here is how just a simple suburban housewife, through some acts of goodwill,
Simple suburban.
the national spotlight.
A simple suburban housewife with ties to the CIA.
Yeah, her whole family.
There you go. Yeah, boy. I mean, you just got to look at this woman.
Walking through the home, guests at the evening reception immediately noticed the 1960s era furnishings.
We came from the same generation as me.
Charlene Huggins is struck by what she is seeing.
It's kind of chilling. It brings back a lot of memories of that era. And I remember the day exactly when it happened.
I thought it was amazing. I was really surprised because as a kid I played in that house.
Patrice Foster's family was friends with the Paines.
I played with the kids. I even met Lee.
You met Lee?
Yes.
Your impressions?
Oh, she always just said, stay away from Lee, don't disturb him. So we just, we were kids. We were just,
To get the home back to the way it looked in 1963, city employees studied photos. Check out the curtains in this Paine family photo. The city found the exact fabric to remake them. And this photo of the kitchen helped them duplicate many of the details in there.
And the guy said, hey, I can make something that'll look like that washing machine. I tell you, when I saw it, the first time I saw the washing machine. Oh, yeah, it really looks fancy.
Probably asked Ruth Payne 10,000 questions about what color was the carpet, what color were the walls, what did the sink look like. I'm asking her these things 50 years later, but she was a good sport and had a good memory too.
They did an amazing job on the shoe strip. Yeah. They made the couch. Yeah.
It all comes together to tell a story of contrast. A busy mother raising kids while suddenly finding herself in one of the news events of the century.
In relation to the assassination, I think this house really does tell a story, and I was nervous about coming in. Well, how will it be done? But it seems to be been done very well.
The first stop for guests is actually here at the visitor center on the 3rd floor of the Central Library. You can watch vintage news reports, hear residents' recollections, and more.
Because the house is in a residential neighborhood, we don't want people just driving to the house. So you'll come here to the visitor center, get some background information, and then you will go downstairs, get into a van, and drive over to the house.
Our shared life of dishes and diapers was an idyllic respite.
Once at the house, visitors can take in video recreations in 2 rooms and the garage, where investigators say Oswald got the gun he used.
The police going to question all people working at the Texas School Book Depository that morning. Lee Oswald was no longer present.
Those are the real words and the real stories of the real people.
I love the technology that they're using, with the glass and I love that. I love the stories that they're telling in each different room. I think they did a wonderful job.
So this would be Ruth's room and where she slept.
For group visits, guides will also explain some of the details that might be missed on an initial walkthrough.
This is the room that Lee Harvey slept in the night before, and a little cup on the dresser, supposedly where he left his wedding ring in there when he left in the morning.
The organization Preservation Dallas is working to get this home on the National Register of Historic Places.
So we have every reason to believe it will go through, but we don't have that officially yet.
I think we're going to see a lot of people come to Irving as part of this and visit. I can tell you that we've already been getting calls from all over the United States.
From the complicated conspiracy theories to the tough tasks of motherhood, this home tells the story of Ruth Payne's time in Irving, a story she is happy to share.
It was important for the country to have whatever information I could provide, because I had seen Lee in an informal setting for those 2 months just prior to the assassination. And I wanted people to know what happened.
There you just saw a nice little video about a key player in the assassination of John F. Kennedy, who just happened to arrange for Lee Oswald to obtain a position at the Texas School Book Depository about 2 weeks before the assassination would take place. A book written about her entitled Mrs. Paine's Garage, I reviewed. You can find the review on assassinationscience.com. Just scroll down the menu bar on the left.
Yeah, it's quite the coincidence that Lee happened to get a job there just in time.
Yeah, boy, this woman sold out big time with her.
Yeah,
and it looks more like the garage that they wanted to give everyone the psyop. So I'm sure that this and the 6th floor disinformation museum, I would say they're probably on the same.
Yeah, Ruth Payne is a person.
Do we know anything about the guy who replaced Gary Mack, by the way?
Yeah, Stephen Fagan.
What's the story on him, Larry?
He's, he's Gary Mack's boy, and then he's going to continue to propagate the exact, the exact view, and it's business as usual. Let's just
three shots from the 6th floor window, the assassin's lair, open and shut case, right?
Yeah, they will continue. They will continue to not include Murder in Dealey Plaza in their bookstore there. Jim, in case you wanted to know.
Yeah, they told me my books didn't meet their standards.
Right.
And I'm sure that's true because they were full of truth and evidence.
Yeah, they weren't lying to you there, Jim. It did not meet their standards.
Well, don't forget, we saw Fagan a couple of weeks ago when he was interviewing the photographer, Bob Jackson, remember? And that was Fagan right there doing the interview.
Yeah, where was that, Larry? Was that in Dallas?
Yeah, that was a couple of weeks ago when we did the show on the lowrider.
Yeah.
So, Larry, what you're saying is basically the guy's a shill.
Yeah, he's going to continue to propagate the position of the 3rd floor, the 6th floor museum.
That job pays $200,000 a year. You're going to have to toe the line over there. And I bet you can get a half-off ticket to the Ruth Payne Museum, too.
So, get this. Somebody, I'm not going to mention his name, I was speaking to the other day, told me that Grodin had been offered that job before Fagan.
Really? Paying too much. His job
to be the custodian of the 6th floor museum.
Yeah, the curator. Yeah, the curator. Yeah.
The curator.
Well, yeah, that's great because
that is at least showing his true colors.
Yeah, Grodin apparently, he goes on and on about this battle that he has with the 6th floor museum.
That's a ruse, man.
He's making more money than Gary Mack ever made. He's working the outside.
That's false flag, if we ever seen that.
Yeah.
Right, tell us about George de Mohrenschildt, who's widely regarded as having been Lee Oswald's handler.
Mm-hmm. All right, yeah, towards the end, this one gets a little juicier. So this is seems to be demonizing Lee a little bit. So here we go. We've got this last clip, and we'll be out.
Well, we met Oswald in the summer of 1962 when we heard that there was a young couple who arrived from Russia and were in very difficult financial condition. So a friend of mine and myself drove to Fort Worth and found this tenement house where he was living near Montgomery Ward.
And was giving either crib or playpen or clothes from Marina. For instance, people were so wonderful that I believe she had close to 100 dresses in her wardrobe. And they were nice things. They weren't old, worn out things, but they were just nice things that people had too many and they shared. And in fact, that was one of the biggest objections of Oswald because it made it very difficult for him. He could never provide Marina with 100 dresses. But it's rather difficult to discuss people's married life because what you see outside is not always goes on when you don't see the people. But from what we knew, they weren't very happy. But for some particular reason, they both didn't want to leave each other. We found out that Oswald was beating Marina. Well, Marina spoke to me a few times about their actual married life, and she was in a way complaining that he was not aggressive enough and he was not interested enough in sex, and quite often he would prefer reading or prefer just to do more work and attend to this. On the other hand, with her, it was quite important, and she definitely felt lack of it. That could be also one of the problems. She teased him about sex, and she teased him about other little different things, about how he works, if he doesn't attend to this, and he doesn't attend to that. And all these things should never be done in front of people. It's the worst thing you can do to your husband, to say something publicly, even with the friends or the people you're supposed to know, but especially sex. I don't think that should never be mentioned. And that could be a very big point with him. He was humiliated by it, definitely.
I had the impression that he was in love with Marina, and that on his side there was no unhappiness. What's the thing I remember now? That he did not want Marina to learn English, maybe because he was an intensely jealous person. He did not want Marina to communicate with other people.
Well, one of the things struck me quite odd. Finally, we were talking to him. He was forbidding Marina to smoke outright. I was trying to explain to him that this is modern times. Women do smoke, providing they smoke moderately. There's no harm in it at all. The worst thing he can do is forbid her smoking. And I believe I convinced him to permit Marina to smoke, which she was very happy, and she said once that, yes, she smokes, and it's all right. Then all of a sudden, we dropped by one evening to visit them, and then she went in the kitchen, and she came back quite upset. I said, what happened? She said, he just took cigarette out of my mouth and put it out on my shoulder.
What happened actually, that I was standing there on the balcony, and my wife and Marina were looking at the rifle which was inside of the closet. And Marina said to my wife, look at that idiot, he has a rifle here. Instead of buying food or necessities for our home, he bought a rifle. And that's what I just overheard. But I actually did not even look in the closet. And it seems to me like such a ridiculous idea for Oswald to buy a rifle when he needed money so desperately. It was just a big joke.
So we all start laughing how crazy it is, and then at a clear sky, George has a peculiar sense of humor sometimes. He said, did you take by any chance pot shot at Walker? And we all laughed at it like a great big joke, like nobody thought anything of it at all, because we never thought that anything like that could happen. And later on, from reading the papers, we heard that that's exactly what happened.
Oh, thank God.
Ooh. Yeah, I think they were ratting out poor Lee, saying that they saw a rifle in his closet, and how dare him buy a rifle when he have money to feed his family. So,
well, the first thing I want to say about this video is that this was very soon after the assassination. They were obviously under duress. If you look at the Mohrenschildt in Shane O'Sullivan's Oswald documentary, and he completely 180 degrees. He is denouncing the entire thing. He is making fun of the gullibility of the American public and believing that one lone nut does the assassination and another lone nut comes and silences him. And it's all coincidental, and so on and so forth. And the last thing I wanted to say before we sign up, that black woman that was saying that Lee, that she was told to stay away from Lee. That is such a crock. I've never seen anything so blatantly ridiculous, and it's totally propaganda, Jim, because even Wesley Frazier said that Lee was very good with children and that he loved to play with children. He was seen playing with his children all the time, and how can they allow that woman to even blurt something out like that. It's ridiculous.
The disinformation campaign is never ending, Larry.
Exactly.
Sometimes it's insulting beyond belief.
I mean, Judy Baker, Wesley Frazier, complete.
I mean, why can't you get Lee's tax records to this day? What's they're held up due to national security.
Yeah, I know.
How is that possible unless the official account of the assassination is completely wrong?
Well, yeah, and my theory on that has been it's not United States national security that's in the balance. It's Israel's national security.
Well, look, Lyndon was a key player. There were a lot of people, Texas politicians, Texas local Dallas political leaders, Dallas police, Dallas Sheriff's Department, FBI.
A lot of those
people were involved in this thing.
Yeah, Lyndon was Jewish. Lyndon was Jewish.
Yeah, that is an interesting observation, Don. And of course, Gaten Fonzie is coming to interview George de Mohrenschildt, who just happens to blow off his head with a shotgun.
Yeah.
Another coincidence.
Yeah, it was strange them talking about Lee's sex life and how he beat on.
That came up quite a bit in all of this.
Now, what precisely did they say?
They said that Lee wasn't interested in sex with her. He preferred to read, and she would put him down for it and stuff like that.
Well, he did have a couple of kids, He had to have some interest in sex.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that always seemed to be one of the main things. That was even in Oliver Stone's film about that. And they were really demonizing Lee, especially that part towards the end about the rifle. How crazy it is to have a rifle in your closet and not have money for food. That was a little strange.
And
yeah,
why would you take?
It's nonsense. It just doesn't hang together at all.
And why would you take curtain rods to work?
Yeah, the whole
nobody sees you carry them in.
The whole story is so completely ridiculous. Years later, you just can't believe anyone ever believed it.
Yeah, historians are going to laugh. In 40, 50 years, what the hell?
Gary, take us out.
All right, Ruth Payne, hope you're doing okay over there in California. And all right, fellas, we appreciate it. This has been the JFK Show number 138, and we'll have a new show for you next week, and we'll see you later.